Israeli elections are just 2 days away, with key parties holding final campaign rallies as they look to secure the trust of voters. We'll go live to our correspondents at the campaign headquarters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is doubling down on his warning that a war with Gaza could be imminent, this time claiming it could happen before Israel's election on Tuesday. And a top Iranian general is warning the United States that it's ready for a fully fledged war, saying its missiles are capable of reaching American military bases over 1,000 miles away as tensions between Tehran and Washington continue to intensify. Hello, I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me. We begin with a developing story, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has assured his cabinet that the Trump administration will include the annexation of West Bank territory in its long-awaited peace plan. The Prime Minister telling senior officials on Sunday that applying sovereignty over settlements will come up in the so-called deal of the century, which is expected to be released shortly after Israel's election on Tuesday. Now, just last week, Netanyahu pledged to annex Jewish settlements in the West Bank if he wins. The Israeli cabinet announcing a short while ago it has approved the legalisation of the settlement of Mevawat Jericho, which is near the Jordan Valley in the West Bank. The decision was made soon after Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit withdrew a legal opinion cautioning against the move, arguing that the proposal stems from, or at least appears to stem from, considerations of the upcoming election. Here's Netanyahu speaking from a cabinet meeting in the Jordan Valley.
I'm proud to convene this special cabinet meeting in the Jordan Valley. It's not just the eastern gate of Israel, it's the defensive wall from the east. Because the Jordan Valley, together with the territories that will be part of Israel, guarantee that the IDF will be here forever. Instead of having a country that is only a few kilometers wide, it's a country with strategic depth and strategic height.
Now, this promise from Netanyahu to annex parts of the West Bank is stirring intense reactions from world leaders, with Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu saying that the plan shows that Israel is becoming a racist apartheid regime. Now, state television quoting Cavusoglu adding, if the whole Muslim community had reacted together, then the reckless plans, policies and behaviour of the United States and Israel would never have reached this point. Now, Turkey and Israel, who were former allies, have been at loggerheads over Israel's policy toward Palestinians and Jerusalem's status, with the US recognising it as the capital of Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is doubling down on his warning that a war with Gaza could be imminent, this time claiming it could happen before Israel's election on Tuesday. The Prime Minister making the comments hours after returning from a meeting in Russia. Our diplomatic correspondent Mike Wagenheim has more on the Prime Minister's remarks and the timing.
Could Israel go to war on the eve of elections? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not ruling it out. After meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Netanyahu said upon touchdown in Tel Aviv that war with terror groups in the Gaza Strip could break out at any moment, and that elections will not factor into his decision. Netanyahu, known as Mr. Security, has been dogged by the terrorist Hamas group's inability to control rival Islamist factions in the Strip. Rockets launched at Israeli territory multiple times over the past week were mostly intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system or landed in open areas. On Tuesday night, though, 2 rockets fired at the coastal city of Ashdod during a campaign rally forced Netanyahu's bodyguards to whisk him from the stage, a potentially devastating image for the premier. Netanyahu chastised his political rivals for supposedly gloating over Netanyahu's misfortune. Netanyahu is accused by critics of going too soft on Hamas, which Israel holds responsible for any and all terrorist actions emanating from Gaza. Netanyahu now runs the risk that tougher action that could lead to war, will be seen by the Israeli public as a political rather than security and defense measure. Israel and Hamas have fought 3 wars since 2008, with 3 former IDF chiefs of staff among the top 4 members of the rival blue and white ticket. Consistent disruptive attacks from Gaza, growing tension on the Lebanese border, and a sudden openness to rapprochement with the Iranians by Donald Trump. Netanyahu's security credentials, his bread and butter, are now under the microscope like never before. As Israelis head to the polls on Tuesday, will they be doing so with rocket sirens blaring overhead and with tanks heading down the highway? It still seems far-fetched, but Netanyahu is leaving his options open militarily as his options politically continue to narrow. Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News.
Now, with just 2 days until Israelis go to the polls, our correspondent Pierre Cloche-Endler sat down with Amir Peretz, the leader of the Labour Gesher list, to speak politics and defence. Here's his take on Netanyahu's current policy on Iran and his own strategy in dealing with Israel's regional rival.
I think when it comes to Iran, the Prime Minister is doing a good job, both in policy and in fostering the sanctions against Iran. Other than ending its production of nuclear materials, Iran must also stop financing terror groups around the world. Iran is financing all of the terror groups, not just Hamas and Hezbollah. It's financing terror groups in Yemen and other countries. Here, there needs to be a global coalition. But for us to succeed, what Netanyahu intends, he needs to do something. What he needs to do is start negotiations with the Palestinians. Why is this related? Because the moment that we hold negotiations with the Palestinians, that would be the key to enter a coalition with the moderate Arab states' axis. To counter the axis of Iran's radical Islam, there needs to be a moderate axis, and we need to be a center player in this axis. The Muslim moderate states will not accept us if we do not start negotiations with the Palestinians. And so, in order to cope with the great threat of Iran, we need to start doing something here in our region. And that is not to speak with Hamas, but to start speaking with Palestinian President Abbas.
And for that full interview, tune in to I-24 News at 9 p.m. Israel time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Iran says that it's ready for a full-fledged war with the United States. Top Commander Amir Ali Haji Zadeh warning that American bases up to 1,200 miles away are within reach of their missiles after Washington blamed Tehran for a Houthi drone attack on Saudi oil facilities. Yemen's Houthi rebels launching the drone attacks on the world's largest oil processing facility and a major oil field on Saturday, sparking huge fires. The state-run news agency is reporting that no staff were injured at either site. Saudi's energy minister says the kingdom's temporarily stopping production at the oil facilities that were attacked by the rebels, while US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has come out to say that Iran has now launched an unprecedented attack on the world's energy supply.
Iran destabilizes this entire region. It supports proxy militias and terrorist groups. It is an arms dealer to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and Iran conducts cyber hacking campaigns. And it supports the murderous Assad regime as well.
Meanwhile, the attacks will likely further increase tensions across the Persian Gulf amid an escalating crisis between the US and Iran over its unravelling nuclear deal with world powers. In response, Senator Lindsey Graham is raising the possibility of US military action following the drone attacks. The Republican senator taking to Twitter to say Iran will not stop its misbehaviour until the consequences become more real, like attacking their refineries, which will break the regime's back. We're going out for a short break, but when we come back, just 2 days ahead of the Israeli elections on Tuesday, and the major political parties are holding campaign rallies. We'll take you live to them when we come back. All of that, plenty more. Stay with us.
Brace yourself for your daily dose of news. I'm Jeff Smith. Join me every day for a fast-paced breakdown of major international stories with an emphasis on live reporting. An analysis of news you need to know. We'll track the headlines quickly, expertly, in a dose you can handle.
I-24 News, the international channel in the heart of the Middle East, now brings you a new view of this troubled region. From I-24 News' acclaimed Arabic language channel, the stories, the people, the passions of the Middle East that you haven't seen before. A weekly roundup of highlights from I-24 News Arabic. Every Sunday, only on I-24 News. Prime Minister hopeful and co-leader of the Blue and White Party, Yair Lapid, joins us in our studio to talk security, secular religious relations, and his hopes of denying Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a record 5th term in office. Today, 8 p.m. Israel time, 1 p.m. Eastern, only on I-24 News.
Politics, economics, business, and technology. Get the real news and the real insight about what's happening around the world. Michelle McCory breaks down the top stories of the day from the Middle East to the U.S. Weeknights beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern.
The power of creativity, the effects of technology, the development of entrepreneurship. Israel Business Weekly connects you to the story like no one else. Tune in for a journey around the world to find the inventors and technologies shaping our future. Watch Israel Business Weekly every Sunday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on I-24 News.
Thanks for staying with us. Let's go back now to the Israeli elections, which of course are just 2 days away, and voters are set to go to the polls on Tuesday. As it stands, the ruling Likud party, headed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is neck and neck with the Blue and White Party, with former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid at the helm. Now, just days out, Netanyahu has called an emergency meeting on election fraud, saying that a number of cases went uninvestigated following the last election in April. And let's bring in our correspondents now. We have Alec Pollard standing by at the rally for the Blue and White Party there in Tel Aviv. And we also have our senior correspondent, Owen Alterman, who's at a Likud event in Bat Yam, which, of course, is just south of Tel Aviv. Thank you both so much for joining me. I want to start with you. Tell me, let's talk about the ruling Likud Party and also the reigning Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Where is it all standing as of now?
Well, Sarah, listen, first of all, just to tell you a little bit about this event, as you'll see behind me and around me, this room is filling up with hundreds of Likud activists. Many of them are members of the party, so they'll vote in the party primaries and have in the past. Some are even members of the Likud Central Committee. You can hear the music playing. You can see behind me pictures of Benjamin Netanyahu with world leaders. I believe what you may even see behind me is a picture of Benjamin Netanyahu with the leader of Chad, a Central African country with which Benjamin Netanyahu established relations. Sarah, no country is too small or too out of the way for the diplomatic blitz and Prime Minister Netanyahu. You can see the passion of the Likud activists around me. As for where this race stands from the Likud perspective, look, Likud wants to be the largest party and wants to have the largest bloc. And it's on the cusp of potentially having 61 seats for its right-wing bloc, but it might not get there. Benjamin Netanyahu trying in any case to get the Likud base out to the polls. He's trying to win back support from Russian speakers. That may be why we're here in Bat Yam, a city with a large Russian-speaking population. And maybe most timely, Benjamin Netanyahu is campaigning for the support of religious Zionists, of religious voters on the right who have been tempted to vote for the right-wing Yamina party, led by Ayelet Shaked. And Shaked this afternoon coming out with an attack on Netanyahu, saying that he personally hates her and his party is trying to make her party small and weak. Sarah, we can expect the Prime Minister to answer that call tonight.
Owen, stay with me. I'll come back to you in a moment. Let's go now to Alec Pollard. Alec, you were, of course, at the Blue and White rally, which, of course, that party trying to unseat the Likud, trying to get Benjamin Netanyahu out of power. What kind of rally can we expect there tonight where you are?
Yes, Sarah. Well, the venue here in Tel Aviv is actually not very large. Only a couple hundred people can fit in here, but it's really more about the television exposure. The rally will start in about an hour, which is when the primetime reels begin here in Israel, and the major party leaders will be here. Gabi Ashkenazi, number 2, Yair Lapid, and the leader of the party, Benny Gantz. And really, it's all about galvanizing the base at this point, conveying the sense of urgency that both parties, Blue and White and Likud, are in a dead heat. They're each polling in around 32 seats, just as they did in the previous election. But the main difference this time around is that Israel Beitenu, party of Avigdor Lieberman, have said they won't join a narrow right-wing coalition with Likud, which means currently the Likud bloc, the right-wing bloc, is below the necessary 61 votes that are needed to form a coalition, and so is the center-left bloc of Benny Gantz. So really, they're going to try to bring out that message that they can win this time because of these different circumstances, bring out the base to come out to vote and to change the government in these elections.
Alec, thank you. Stay there. I'll come back to you. Let's now go to Owen. Owen, tell us what else can we expect there tonight in Bat Yam, and tell me what are the real goals of the Likud party with just 48 hours left until Israelis go to the polls?
Well, Sarah, listen, I think we can expect the Prime Minister to be shooting in 3 directions tonight. First of all, in the direction of his Likud base to make sure that his supporters come out and vote. Again, in the city of Bat Yam, where we're standing, 39% of the vote went for Likud back in April. The Prime Minister will want to make sure that his traditional supporters, many of them working-class Mizrahim from the Israelis of Middle Eastern origin, that he will want to bring them out to the polls and make sure that they come and vote. That's number 1. Number 2, as we mentioned before, the Russian-speaking public, a focus of attention throughout the course of this campaign, and a focus of the Prime Minister's rivalry with Israel Beitenu and its chairman, Avigdor Lieberman. Again, Bat Yam, a town with a large Russian-speaking population. Benjamin Netanyahu will be wanting to continue to speak to them and to trying to get their vote. And third, again, toward religious right-wing voters, again, in the Prime Minister's competition with Ayelet Shaked and her Yamina party, he may directly be wanting to answer Ayelet Shaked's challenge earlier today when she came out and said that Netanyahu wants her party and the religious Zionist sector small and weak, and that she is personally hated by the Prime Minister, implying that he puts his personal rivalry with her ahead of the ideological needs of the right-wing camp. We can expect to hear from the Prime Minister about that tonight. And beyond that, Sarah, this is a Prime Minister who likes to win news cycles, who likes to make headlines, with Israel's 8 o'clock nightly newscast ahead of him. And as you mentioned, less than 48 hours to go until polls open.
Certainly, Owen. I want to bring Alec back in. Alec, tell me, if indeed the Blue and White Party does win this election and manage to form a coalition, tell me, how will this rotation agreement between Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz work, and how would voters feel about such an agreement?
Well, much has been said about this rotation agreement, but it's basically quite simple. A 4-year term, 2 years Yair Lapid would be Prime Minister, and 2 years Benny Gantz would be Prime Minister. But a really interesting situation that we could have is if there is a unity government, in which case in a unity government, let's say between the Blue and White Party and the Likud Party, then each of those major parties has the Prime Minister role for 2 years. So Likud would have for 2 years, and then Blue and White would have for 2 years, and those that portion of Blue and White would be further split into another 2 terms, one for Yair Lapid and one for Benny Gantz, meaning each one of them would be Prime Minister for 1 year, and the candidate from Likud, Benjamin Netanyahu, would be for 2 years. So that would be a very interesting situation to have, and one that some people have criticized as being totally unstable, to have so many changes in the Prime Minister role if that kind of rotation takes place.
Well, it certainly would be interesting. Not long to go now. Alec Pollard, Owen Alterman, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Now, as we said, with elections just around the corner, one community in Israel could change the game if it decides to show up. Middle East correspondent Emily Rose reports on the key issues impacting the Arab community in Israel.
They make up some 20% of the population and could change the game at the ballot box. Arab Israelis can vote, but last election in April, less than 50% did so. As experts say, one issue is top of mind for those who do decide to vote.
The first one is the violence. Spread violence and killing and the crime within the Arab community, that Arabs are eager to combat such violence.
Indeed, 61% of murders in Israel in 2018 were of Arab citizens. That's 3 times higher than their representation in Israel's overall population. And some feel the Israeli police just aren't doing enough.
Crime, preventing crime in this country, that's the most important thing, especially in our community, because it's out of control. And I pray that any party that wins will take a strong hand to the issue of crime, especially the guns. It's enough already.
What do they help us with? It's the opposite. They go against us. The police. They see an Arab and they go against him. If we were Jews, they would have helped us.
But there are other issues on the minds of Arab voters.
Citizens are facing a real challenge, a shortage of housing, the lack of planning in most of the Arab towns is a real problem. The issue of education within the Arab community, in the Negev, in the unrecognized villages, over 5,000 kids in the age of 3 to 5 still without access to early education.
What are they doing with our children? They're on the streets. They're just wandering around. Why are they being corrupted?
One issue that does seem to have lost steam among Arab voters is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but remains ever present, even in the background.
We are put in between the rock and the hard place. We would like to see peace between our people, the Palestinian, and our country, Israel.
And Arab voters may choose to make their voices heard this time around. A recent study conducted by the Moshe Dayan Center in Tel Aviv found that 56% of the Arab population is expected to vote on September 17th. Of those, 80.5% of potential voters intend to support the joint list. And 49% of potential voters want to see Arab parties join the coalition. But this renewed turnout and support may not be enough to impact key issues for Arab voters. Emily Rose, I-24 News.
Now, as we've been reporting, Israel this week is headed to its second election in less than a year. The country's also been seeing an increase in the number of films and documentaries focusing on political figures. I-24 News' Emily Francis takes a look at a few films creating buzz and why the topic is so popular among filmmakers.
Shabbat Shalom.
Is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the right man for the job? Or is he the best at making people believe he is because of his mastery of public speaking?
If you want to receive the truth and hear the truth, go to my Facebook.
The documentary King Bibi shares his journey from coming of age in the U.S. to becoming Israel's longest-serving prime minister.
It's also about what it is to be a politician these days, what is politics, how we are affected by these images, how we are affected by these messages, and do we have the power to oppose it or to think for ourselves?
מאז שנכנסתי לתפקיד ראש הממשלה, לא הצלחתי לגמור חלום.
And then there's a new documentary, Golda, offering an inside look at Israel's fourth prime minister and only woman to hold the job, but who fell from grace after the Yom Kippur War. There are currently 2 films about assassinated Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin during his attempts to bring peace in the region. Incitement is currently being screened at the Toronto Film Festival and is nominated for 10 Israeli Academy Awards. The film chronicles a promising law student, Yigal Amir, turned religious zealot obsessed with murdering Rabin. The Human Factor, being screened at the Telluride Film Festival, interviews American negotiators during the time of the peace process, ending with the Second Oslo Accord in 1995 between Yitzhak Rabin and Palestinian Liberation Organization's Yasser Arafat. And the film Lieberman documents the meteoric rise of Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, who resigned last year, yet remains poised to become the kingmaker in the upcoming elections.
המתלבש הכי גרוע בכנסת.
And then there's the film about communist politician Dov Hanin, who passed over 100 laws in the Israeli parliament.
The film loves Dov. The film even admires Dov because I love Dov and I admire Dov.
Times of Israel culture editor Jessica Steinberg says the overall rise in Israeli productions dealing with religion and politics is a sign of the times we're in.
I think Israeli film and TV has gone through a process, really. Obviously, a lot used to be about the army and the experience of the army on the Israeli public. Right. And now we're looking at different genres. We're looking at different subjects. We're looking at religion.
Emily Francis, I-24 News.
And that is all we have time for this edition of I-24 News, but we are continuing to bring you all of the breaking stories. So do go ahead and visit us online, i24news.tv, and we have all of those stories on all of our social media platforms. I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for watching.